Joining me now is Stephen Richer, former Maricopa County, Arizona recorder who held the office during the 2020 and 2022 elections. I appreciate you coming on the show. You wrote back in January, Stephen, a piece for The Bulwark, and it was titled, "Governor Polis, Do Not Pardon Tina Peters." He then commuted her sentence after Trump punished his state economically, and I should say repeatedly, when he didn't do what Trump wanted. So I wonder what your thoughts are now.
I think the commutation is one thing, and it's problematic because of the message that it sends to election deniers and to the Trump administration that they can get away with anything. But I think just as problematic is what Governor Polis has been saying since Friday when he commuted the sentence. He's been saying it had nothing to do with the 2020 election. And that's just wrong to the point of being silly because, of course, what she was doing in 2021, the unlawful actions for which she was prosecuted, for which she was charged, for which she was convicted, they had everything to do with the 2020 election and her attempts to prove that the 2020 election was stolen, her attempts to connect with MyPillow's Mike Lindell in overturning the election. And so I don't get what the governor is doing here, and I certainly don't get why he's saying the things he's saying.
So you know what it was like for election workers back then in 2020. You know that firsthand. Is part of your fear that this commutation could make people think, well, they can get away with targeting workers, even breaking the law?
Absolutely. And I think we've already seen that play out with respect to the January 6th rioters who now have been told that, hey, storming the Capitol, not that big of a problem as long as you're doing it for the right team, for the right guy. And now I think that this is sending a message to the whole world that you can do things that are unlawful in election administration as long as you're doing on behalf of a cause that President Trump likes. It wouldn't surprise me if Tina Peters now gets the Presidential Medal of Freedom or if she's appointed to the administration. And so I think that Governor Polis is looking at this as if it's just another 70-year-old who committed a white-collar crime, and he's not looking at the political context. He's not looking at what this means for election administrators right now, and he's not looking at what this means for election administrators in 2026 and in 2028.
So let me ask you about that specifically. What are your biggest concerns ahead of the midterms and ahead of the presidential when it comes to election integrity?
Well, vis-a-vis the Peters sentencing, I would say that there could be an election administrator who's sympathetic to President Trump, who gets it in his mind that he is going to do something that President Trump likes that violates federal law, but that's okay because the president will pardon him. Or if it violates state law, that's going to be fine too, because then President Trump will put pressure on the governor and the governor will pardon him. And so the one thing that I've always said that has really checked our elections is that we have good state and federal laws that election administrators have to abide by. And if you don't believe that they are abiding by them, then you can take them to court either in civil or criminal action. That's always what's been upheld and affirmed our elections. Now we're calling into question that process. And I think, again, that Governor Polis's decision, and maybe even more problematically, his language really eviscerates that foundation.
We are seeing ways in which various arms of the federal government are using their power in ways we've never seen before, perhaps even arguably never imagined before. Let me give you one example. The Trump administration promoting a program that checks voter eligibility by running at least 67 million registrations through a beefed up DHS verification program. Are you concerned about the impact this could have on voters, leading to people wrongly being deemed ineligible to vote?
I think that more data and more tools are positive things. But election administrators who are using the federal government's SAVE database should use it as one point of information, because various reporting has already shown that this is an imperfect tool that has registered quite a few false positives, meaning people who have been said to not be citizens but in fact, they are U.S. citizens who can lawfully participate in election. So no election administrator throughout the United States should simply be feeding names to the SAVE database and then removing them from the voter rolls based off the SAVE database alone. Now, again, this is, as you said, one action in which the federal government under President Trump is trying to nationalize, is trying to federalize election administrators. That used to be something that my party, the Republican Party, would stand up against and say, states matter, these should be run by states. But we are not doing that today, and we are not doing that with this president.
Steve Richer, it's so good of you to come on the program. Thank you so much.